Yay! What is up, everybody? Thanks for your patience getting started just a couple minutes, a little bit past the hour this evening, but for good reason. Our guest tonight is full of stories, and all I want to do is just sit and listen to them all. Tonight's show gonna be fun because we get to talk a bit about Hardrock, which is always a fun experience on the show.
Yep.
We've had a number of people on this show talk about the race. We have yet to go this year, unfortunately. Some dog stuff took us from being able to travel far, but we have Howie Stern on the show tonight to tell us all about what happened at Hardrock. He finished it, his 10th Hardrock finish, and that is such a milestone. I'm excited to talk to the man, have him on the show for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk all about who Howie Stern is, what he accomplished this weekend, what he accomplished on the bigger scale. We're going to hear all about the lightning storms, the craziness that is Hardrock, on tonight's episode number 220. Yeah, very excited. So welcome everyone to Ginger Runner Live. Sit back, relax, grab your beverage of choice, whether adult or childlike, doesn't matter. Here we go. Ginger Runner Live, episode number 220 begins now.
Ginger Runner.
Yay! What is up, everybody? Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 220. We're getting up there. Oh my God, I want to punch my own face.
I'll punch it for you.
Okay, great. Thanks. That's what wives are for. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy Mondays to spend a little bit of it with us on tonight's episode. Very excited. Lots to talk about tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, Hardrock.
Yep.
Hardrock 100, one of the toughest, if not the toughest, 100-miler in the United States and the globe. Took place this last weekend. A huge event that takes place in Colorado. Are you
new here?
I'm new, brand new.
All right.
I'm underplaying it. It's such a massive race, and we've had the race director on the show before. We've had racers, winners, past champions, male and female, on the show to talk about it. Tonight, our guest has run it 10 times. Howie Stern, a photographer extraordinaire, is going to be joining us on tonight's episode. In fact, many of our thumbnails for Ginger Runner Lives are Howie's photographs. He's often behind the lens, taking incredible photographs of runners doing their thing. But on occasion, he steps in front of the lens and onto the trails and just crushes monster races. The hardest races, AC 100, Hardrock. So he's going to talk to us a bit tonight about his 10th running of the Hardrock. There was some stuff that went down out there in those mountains, electrical storms, based off of some of the initial stories that I've read. This is going to be our first time actually talking with him since the event, since it took place on Saturday. It sounds like it was a big deal out there. Took him a long time to get it done, but for good reason, because there's a lot of stuff that went down. So I can't wait to hear all about how Howie's race played out. And to finally get him on the show, too. He's a rad dude. So we'll introduce Howie here in just a second. But first, we do have some individuals to thank. Of course, all of our Patreon supporters, those who support us month in, month out at various levels. They are the reason that the show is able to exist every single Monday live, including the reviews, the films, all that stuff. We are able to do this full-time because of our Patreon supporters. So thank you, each and every one of you. And of course, 3 individuals in particular at our top tier on Patreon. Chris Lee from Hong Kong. He organizes this really cool community called Trailblazer over there, showcasing the trails in Hong Kong. Also raises money for charities. They did a Where Dreams Go to Die screening recently, raised $10,000 for charity. Just a really amazing guy, really talented runner, and big shout out to Chris Lee. Rick Bjarnason, he is a Canadian that lives in British Columbia, an ultrarunner, just attempted Sinister 7 and is currently training for Fat Dog 120. Which are
the hardest
races in Canada. But he is also a web designer, and they're currently redesigning the gingerrunner.com website. Very excited to share that finally.
Looks really good so far.
Yeah, it looks pretty spicy, which I really like. So big shout out to Rick. He and his team there do incredible work. His team at cheekymonkeymedia.ca. If you have any interest in needing web design, anything like that, give Rick a shout out. His whole team do incredible work, and they're really good about staying up to date and keeping you involved and stuff like that. It's been a really fun process for me. And finally, Brian Sands, wonderful viewer, longtime supporter of Ginger Runner Live, who ran his first marathon in October, lost over 100 pounds in the process, currently training for his first ultra, which is coming up in, I think, 2 weeks.
2 weeks, I think, yeah.
We're going to find out all about that experience when Brian crushes it, which is going to happen here in a couple weeks. But I believe Brian's probably in the chat room tonight. I see his name. He is. So shout out to Brian, wonderful supporter here on Ginger Runner Live. So thank you, Brian, and thank you all of the Patreon supporters.
And before we dive deep in, speaking of the chat room, we are live, you guys. So if you have questions for our wonderful guest, Howie, tonight, just pop them into the chat room there.
So our guest, photographer extraordinaire, is often out on the courses of many of the ultras that you have run, Kim and I have run. He has all the cameras wrapped around his neck, and he's taking shots of you. So he is most often seen out on the courses taking photographs, incredible photographs. We even got him to take some of our photos of our last
Goodbye LA
photos, which we did a whole set a while back. You can go back on Instagram and stuff and see that. But he's a fantastic artist when it comes to photographs, but he's also a really talented ultra runner. He just finished Hardrock. I can imagine he's probably a little delirious still. I don't know how many meals he's been able to eat since then, but it was a long weekend, so I hope he was able to devour as much food as possible. So our guest tonight, coming to us from Silverton, from one of our frequent viewers and supporters, Kim Wrinkle's home. Kim Wrinkle, who's most likely in the chat room and a longtime viewer of the show, has opened his doors to an incredible number of the members, a large number of the community. That sentence also doesn't work. But Kim opens his doors to ultra runners, especially around the Hardrock season, and Howie's coming to us from Kim's house. So this is pretty cool. It's kind of taking our big Ginger Runner community and shrinking it down to a tiny little microcosm. Without further ado, here he is, Mr. Howie Stern.
Yay!
Hi.
How's it going?
Good. I'm sorry for the long-winded introduction. I realized that you're just sitting there like, let's just get on with this. Let's just do this. I'm sleepy. I need food. First of all, how are you, Howie? It's great to have you on the show.
I'm doing pretty good. I mean, I'm pretty tired. The usual. Of course, I've got the peanut gallery on the other side of the computer here trying to make you pop. But no, I'm doing good. I mean, it's just been kind of like sleep a while, wake up, eat, go back to sleep, wake up a while, walk the dogs, eat some more, and sleep. But
I love it. Let's get a little just kind of history on you. So were you a ultra runner first or a photographer first? Because both of these worlds, I know that you are deep in both of these worlds. So which came first, or did one evolve from the other?
No, ultra running came first. I've been, gosh, it's almost 20 years now since I ran my first 50 miler back in 1998. Oh, wait, that is 20 years. It's 20 years.
It's good math.
Yeah. So, and yeah, I mean, photography didn't come on board until, gosh, maybe 3 years ago or so, maybe 3.5 years ago. Yeah, was when I first started doing that. But yeah, I've always been a runner. I mean, a long time before that, I was a triathlete. And when I did an Ironman in 98, so I think it was the following year, I said, I want to try to run a 100-miler. And Angeles Crest was the first one I had discovered. And since I grew up in those mountains, I was like, oh, well, that sounds like an interesting project. And once I started running trails in the big mountains, I forgot about everything else. And that's mainly what I've been doing since then.
I love that AC 100 is the one that's like, oh, let's try this one out. It's not an easy 100. That thing is nasty.
It took me 3 tries to finally get it, and I wound up finishing Leadville first because I was like, well, after two times of not doing Angeles Crest, I was like, well, let me try another one. Oh, let's go do Leadville. And I lived in Mammoth at altitude, and Leadville turned out to be pretty easy. And then 6 weeks later, I finally finished Angeles Crest, and
I love that it was a back-to-back. It wasn't even like, I'm just training for Angeles Crest and I'm going to nail it. It's, I'm going to run Leadville 6 weeks before and then run Angeles Crest.
Yeah, well, you know, ultra runners are. It's just, once you're in shape for the first one, you just got to recover for the second. I mean, it's not like you have to train anymore. But yeah, Angeles Crest has still been a nemesis for me. As many times as I've finished it, I've almost not finished it as many times.
Yeah, the stories that come out of that race are frequent, and there's carnage. I know your stories, many of them, and I know lots of friends who have sat at that bench at the top of Mount or near the top of Mount Wilson and have changed their opinions on that race. I do want to remind everyone that we are live. We're just now getting into our conversation with Howie Stern. And Kim, you've already pulled a couple
we
questions
already have
aside.
a ton of questions rolling in. We were just speaking about your career, Howie, and Nathaniel in the chat room asked, Howie, what's more challenging, competing in or photographing a race?
Interesting.
I get asked that a lot. And like, for instance, so I'm probably one of the few people that's both shot a 200-mile race and completed a 200-mile race. And I would say it's definitely much easier to run a 200-miler than it is to photograph. Because when you run, essentially all you do is like, okay, the gun goes off and you run and hike and eat and run and hike and eat and just repeat that until you get to the end. Whereas when you're shooting, like for a 200-miler, you got like 4.5 days of shooting. You're like, okay, where am I going to shoot today? What's the light going to be like? What's the terrain going to be like? You know, is it conducive to good photos? And then it's like, as the time goes on, you're like, well, where are the most people at? Or am I following the leaders? Am I like, who do I want to cover? Like, you're constantly thinking, and then you're driving in the middle of the night, completely falling asleep to get to different locations. Whereas when you run, you have one simple task. Now, that's not that it's simple, but it's just a lot less on your mind when you're running these races versus trying to shoot them. You know, something like a 50K, yeah, it's tougher to run it because, you know, I might only shoot at 1 or 2 spots in a 50K. But as the race distance gets longer, in a sense, it does become easier to run. And I'm almost actually more sore and tired after shooting long events and mentally frazzled than I am from running. Because it's sort of like you run a 100-mile race, you know, you finish this thing, there's all these endorphins, all this, you know, this deep sense of like, wow, I just went through a lot of stuff and you're done. But like when I shoot a race, okay, let's say it's a 100-miler, so I was out shooting for 36 hours. That doesn't stop there. I'm going to be sitting in front of the computer for another 30 to 40 hours editing photos, uploading them to the website, you know, because I go through everything. I just don't throw everything up. You know, there's a lot of work. So again, a 100-mile race, there's 36 hours. Shooting a 100-mile race, that's an entire week of work. So it's,
like I know for a fact that you are taking multiple shots of each runner. So depending on however many hundreds of runners are in a race, you're taking multiple shots, and then you have to choose your selects, and then you have to edit, and then you have to put like the work involved in photographing. Like it really is kind of endless. It's
a lot. And then there's just, you know, I mean, the long races I like too, because you're not just shooting on trail, but you're trying to tell the story of the race. So you're constantly always looking for, you might be in aid stations in the middle of the night or in the day at, you know, mile 75 or mile 175. So you're looking for those interesting shots and trying to anticipate when things happen. And you know, it's really rewarding when you get those really good ones. And then other times, you know, I want to get a great shot for everybody. And then, you know, some people just aren't as emotional, or, you know, I just feel when I'm shooting stuff, my mind, there's a lot more stresses on my mind about really, because I really take it to heart trying to capture the story for people. And I want to be able to do that. And whereas when you're running, you know, you're really just concerned about, you know, how your race is going, you know, obviously your crew and friends you have running, but it's just a very different mindset. It's a very different thing.
I'll share a quick story. Happened very recently between Howie and I. I hope he doesn't. Please stop me if you want me to not tell this story.
Oh, I was apologizing for Gus snoring. He is snoring so loud.
I can't even hear him. Our dog is snoring crazy loud. He's earned the sleep. But very recently at Lake Sonoma, Howie is out there photographing Jim Walmsley, who's just crushing it that day. And I'm out there with my camera trying to just the light just went out.
Yeah, that's Billy trying to do shit. Sorry.
Shout out to Billy, our boy Billy Simpson. So Jim is running, and I'm following him with my camera, and we come around this bend. I mean, Jim is I can barely keep up, but I'm trying to get as much footage as I can. And I know Howie is ahead, but what I didn't realize was that Howie was right around the corner trying to get that shot because the view was like perfect and the sun and it was basically a perfect shot for Howie. And he had no idea that I was running with Jim. And I had no idea Howie was there. So I come running through and Howie is like taking photos. And I realize, and both Howie and I realize at the same time, like, those photos are ruined. Those photos are ruined because now there's like a chubby ginger chasing after Jim Walmsley, like has no business doing any of this. But luckily, Howie did end up getting a photograph that has been used, and I don't know how it was perfect. Like
there was one that worked where I can only see like a little part of your short or something or leg or whatever.
No one would know.
No, nobody really would. And it's funny, the same exact thing happened to me at Western States as he was coming up Devil's Thumb. I run ahead, I go to shoot him. There's nobody around except one person with a video camera that starts running behind him. And I'm like, of course, again.
Classic.
So, yeah, it was just kind of funny.
It was funny. I remember apologizing to Howie's like, dude, I am so sorry. And Howie's like, there's not, like, how would we know? How would either of us know?
Well, of course.
It was very forgiving.
I ran that race, and I think that was one of the very first things you said to me when I crossed the finish line was like, I wrecked Howie's shot.
I wrecked Howie's, like, the shot that Howie was going to, like, it was going to make his career.
That's right.
His career is already well established.
Now I'm going to be living in my truck forever.
I want to start talking about Hardrock. So you have a long connection with this race. What is let's start there. Like, how many times have you attempted it? What drew you to this race? And what kept you coming back?
So I discovering Hardrock was kind of random for me. I was just in the post office in Mammoth, and I had a friend who was an ultra runner in Mammoth, and he was also the first one that told me about, I think, Leadville. And then he's like, oh, there's this other race in Colorado called Hardrock. He's like, I've tried it a few times but haven't finished, but it goes over all these high passes and there's crazy storms, but it's absolutely beautiful. And he's like, you should try it. And so in 2002, I had a qualifier at the time, which was Leadville. I remember applying to it, and I got waitlisted. But this is back when there was 110 slots, and there was probably all of 150 people applying to the race. And so, like, I was like 7th in the lottery, and I wound up taking my name off because I just didn't feel like training was going well. Then they canceled the race that year because of there was fires. Oh. In 2003, they rolled all the entrants, so I didn't get to apply. 2004, I was like, well, I'm doing the Jumpmere Trail. I forgot about it. But in 2005, because I had Angeles Crest as qualifiers, I was like, oh, I should apply to Hardrock again. And I got in, and I never saw any of the course except for like 2 miles out of Ouray beforehand. I went to the race. I think I went out there like a week early, but I just went cruising around Colorado to check it out. And then I wound up at Hardrock the Thursday before the race, saw a couple miles of the course. It was a humongous snow year. A third of the course was under snow.
Wow.
Like literally. And I went to the long briefing where they had like slideshow of the whole course back when they actually used slides. These guys are all old school Los Alamos guys. And I was like, wow, this is going to be difficult. Like it's fun. And I'm living in the Sierra, which, are big mountains, but like this was just next level. And so the race itself, never having done that kind of 100. Angeles Crest is really hard, but again, you're not dealing with snow and lightning and high exposure and all this. And so the first time around, I ran a less than ideally paced race. You think you're in good shape. You go out hard, you blow up, go out hard, blow up. I mean, it was a series of linked recoveries. I think I had the greatest cumulative aid station time of anybody, which was like 6 hours. But I remember being halfway through the race the first time, hiking up the long climb up Virginia out of Ouray. It's like a 10-mile road. And I had already slept a couple hours in Ouray because I was just feeling not very well, and slowly walking up the road going, and I stopped about 2 miles up, and I was like, maybe I'm just in over my head. This is just, wow. I'm falling asleep on my feet. I'm just destroyed. And then this pacer comes up, and the runner's kind of a little bit further behind, and she's like, what's going on? I'm like, I don't know. Maybe this is just too much. And she's like, come on, look at my runner. He looks like shit and he's still going. I'm like, yeah, you're right. And she's like, just come with us. I'm like, fine. And so I kind of start walking with them, but I quickly actually drop them because his run, that guy was really doing bad. And I remember falling asleep on the road a few times, and runners they'd kind of walk by and tap you and like, come on, wake up. And I eventually got to the first aid station 7 miles up, ate a bunch of food, felt a little better. And then on the way up to the final climb of Virginia's Pass is 3 pitches of snow. And they're pretty steep, and the last one has a rope to go up it. And this is while Chuck Kroger was still alive, so it wasn't Kroger's Canteen yet. It was just Virginia's Pass, but there was still the aid station up there. And there's all these, and the first thing that happens is I come up to the aid station. You're pulling up the rope, and there's a guy in a sombrero and a big poncho who's got a shot of tequila in my face. And I was like, ooh, that's tempting, but I'm like, dang, I'm 68 miles into Hardrock. The first time. Do I want to risk it? And I was like, thanks, but no thanks. But amazingly, they had a bagel and cream cheese at 13,000 feet in a tiny notch in a ridge.
Wow.
And it started to feel a little better. And then you drop 5 miles, 5,000 feet down the Telluride. And I remember doing the math. I was like, I have 18 hours to go 28 miles. That's less than 2 miles an hour. I can do this. And eventually the passes passed by. I remember doing Grant Swamp from the Chapman side, which that year was actually an ice climb, like a snow climb.
Wow.
With chopped steps. It wasn't the scree like it is now because there was so much snow. And my pacer at the time, who I randomly picked up, was from Texas and had never been in the big mountains. I was like at the bottom of the pass. I'm like, you do realize you're going up like the steepest pass right now, and it's all snow. She's like, yeah, I guess so. I remember being halfway up that snowfield, kind of looking back and almost falling backwards, and like going, oh gosh, okay, just keep looking at my hands. Don't look up, don't look down. But topping out on the pass was the first time I ever saw Island Lake, and it brings tears to your eyes. You just can't believe anything that beautiful actually exists.
Yeah.
And then the rest of eventually got dark. And I remember probably one of the most special moments is, running along the trail along Bear Creek as you're running towards Mineral Creek. It's just, pitch dark, occasionally seeing a runner, but in your head, and I had plenty of time before the cutoff, hours. And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to finish Hardrock. Let's get teary. Sorry.
It's okay.
Have you, Dale? No, that feeling never ends. It never ends. And I remember coming across the creek, running those final few miles, and it's like there's nothing like coming in. And I remember being the first time coming into town, and you're on Jesus Road or the Shrine Road. And I'm like, oh God, where's the trail to get down? I can't find the trail to get down. I'm right above town. The finish is there.
No.
And then finally run into town and make the left turn and make the right turn. And there's the Rock and Dale, and, break down crying. And you can't believe you did it. Like, through all that pain and doubt, it finally came. What kept me coming back? Because originally it was like, I wasn't ever thinking of, this is something I'm going to do every year. And, you sat through the awards. The awards were amazing. He tells a story about every runner a little bit. And his story that he told about me was touching. The effect it had on him. And it was like, wow, there's something pretty amazing about this race, that you instantly kind of felt like you became part of something. Mm. And then everybody says their goodbyes to each other. And then the last person that said goodbye to me was Charlie Thorne, who at the time, he's one of the founders of the race and the course directors. And he reaches out to shake my hand. He's like, so we'll see you again next year, right? And I was like, yeah, I guess you will. And it was him saying, we'll see you again next year. That was the words that brought me back and kept bringing me back year after year. Because I haven't gotten in the lottery every single year. I'm lucky that I'm 10 for 10. I've never DNF'd because I've always looked at Hardrock. There's something so special about this race. I hope to never know what it feels like to DNF it. And I know the second year I did it, I remember having another bad year and sleeping in grouse for 2 hours, and most of the time waking up briefly and looking at the little wristband that you get and going, I can't cut that off. I can't cut it off. I have to figure out how to make this work, but I can't cut that wristband off. Because as bad as it ever gets out there, it eventually gets better. You have so much time. And it's Hardrock. You have to finish.
Yeah.
But there's been 4 years I didn't get selected to the lottery. 3 of those years I paid, like 2 of the years I paced like 60 miles. 1 year I paced a 60-year-old from the start who went 72 miles before he ultimately had to drop because of his back.
Oof.
Unfortunately, he had passed away. And then a few years ago when I ran the race with his ashes and carried them the entire distance so that we got to finally finish together, as well as sprinkled his ashes on Handy's Peak and on Grant Swamp. It truly is a race. It's a family. And everybody who finishes it, everybody who crews it, supports it, paces it, becomes part of that family. You don't have to be just a finisher of the race. If you're taking any way you're a part of this race, a volunteer, you name it, it is unlike anything else. I mean, I've shot races all over the place, but there's something that's just different about Hardrock. And maybe it's because a lot of races people show up to the day before, they run the race, they go home, and then, on with their lives. And Hardrock seems to be this thing. It's like this, it's not like a weekend. People come out to this race like 2 months, a month, weeks beforehand, and they're just in this one tiny little town, this little amazing town with all these wonderful people and little shops, and it becomes like this giant camp where you're seeing runners every day, or you're out on all these different parts of the courses, and you come across people, and you're constantly swapping stories, and then maybe just the course itself when you run the race. These mountains are huge. I mean, I've been in a lot of big mountains, but they're just big. And they keep coming, and then you get these weather systems, and you're all out there just going through it all together. It just creates bonds that just last a lifetime,
You're not the first guest that we've had on that refers to this event and the community around it in such a familial way. Everyone brings up the fact that it's the community, it's the family, it's Dale, it's the volunteers, it's the other like the board, it's everyone that's there for the weeks, like you say, weeks in advance, that make this part of the experience. It's been an incredible thing to just follow from afar. And Kim and I, every year, we like make the plans to go. And just this year was obviously we couldn't make it, but it sounds incredible. Not just the race, but just everything about it. Even all the chat room is like, this is
like the chat room is in awe.
Yeah, they're in awe of you, man. And I've known you for a while, and I've known some of these stories. Another thing that I want to kind of touch on is I feel like at least some of your stories and some of your experiences, there's a lot of sharing involved. I know that you have paced people through it. You have been a part of it, obviously. You've had and invited many of your friends to come pace you and to experience it on a regular basis. How important is that for you to share the experience with others? Because that seems to be a big part of your experience, is to share it with others.
No, I love it. Because I've done the race both ways, with and without pacers. And then some of the pacers I've just picked up randomly from like some of the early years I've done it.
Like from Texas.
Right, from Texas. 1 year I had a pacer, who was a local, and he just paced. I went by myself for the first 92 miles, and he just paced the last 9. And to me, it's a big part of it. I loved it. These mountains are so beautiful. I mean, the wildflowers, just the whole spirit of it. It's great to be out there with friends, or like this year with my girlfriend, and to be able to to share that experience. Because Hardrock, yeah, the pacing at Hardrock is so much slower than most other races, and you don't try to lollygag, but you just have more time to kind of look around and enjoy and really be in the moment of where you are, even if that moment happens to be in a hellacious pain cave. You still try to look around and realize, there's plenty of times you look down, you look at your number, you're like, well, wow, I'm in Hardrock. Okay, it's as bad as this is. It's Hardrock. It's not that bad. It only might last another 24 or 30 hours. But no, I love to share.
No big deal.
Whether it's with friends pacing, with crewing for me, everybody just always seems to be in a positive mood, a happy mood. Like last year when my friend Dennis was pacing me, like to come over Grand Swamp and he'd never seen Island Lake, and to see him crying because, again, the beauty. And the same thing, or to get on top of the last pass and to just, to give each other a hug, or like, wow, like we got through it. This is it. Okay, you're ready to go downhill, ready for some fun. Let's blast. Let's get it done. And that's fun. I enjoy sharing it with everybody. And I think most people do. A lot of people have pacers out here because I know a lot of races have solo divisions now, and the Hardrock to me is not about that. It's not so much it's not about a singular effort of just the runner. It's almost seems like it's all about sharing. Even amongst the runners, it's like, we're not really out there trying to necessarily beat each other. Yeah, we have little friendly rivalries, but like everybody wants, like, we would love to have 145 finishers.
Yeah,
like,
of course,
nobody wants to see anybody not finish that race. And anyway, so it's a huge part of it, having people participate. And because now it's so hard to get in for a first timer that having people out there to pace you, it's like that's a way that you get to be a part of it. And having paced the race, to me, I always felt just as much as a part of it when I was pacing for 20 hours, that I did when I was running. Yeah, of course you don't get to kiss the rock at the end, but still you feel like you're out there. You definitely feel like you're out there. So it's a big part.
That's awesome. I want to remind everyone that we have tons of live questions. So let's get through some of these, and then we're going to start talking about this year's experience and how it differed and what kept Howie huddled underneath some rocks, I'm sure, during some crazy electrical storms, it sounds like. But let's get to some of these live questions. What do we got?
Yeah, Run Tall has a question. They asked, are there any parts of the race that you would hate or be afraid of to reach at nighttime? Any dreadful parts of the race?
No, not for me. I lived in the mountains almost 20 years, so I'm used to a lot of it. If you're not used to certain things, yeah, like doing Virginia's Pass in the middle of the night when it's a frozen snowfield, if you're not used to being on frozen snow at like a 45-degree angle on a rope, that could probably be intimidating. Crossing the snowfield on Little Giant, if it's there at night, a fall, you will die. So like there are spots on the course that can be real. But I don't know. I've never felt in the race ever from the terrain that I was really threatened. But everybody has different comfort levels. If you're not used to a lot of stuff of a very technical nature, where there's consequences at different parts of the course for sure. But yeah, at nighttime, really the only thing at nighttime that can get a little sketchy is some of those parts that might have frozen snow. Occasionally Handy's Peak on the one side of the north side, the ridge gets frozen, and you just got to be careful. Sometimes you just pick up little rocks in your hands, and that becomes your little brakes if you were to slip, or like a pole tent or stake or something. But in all the years I've run it, I've never had an incident where I was like, oh shit, that could have went really wrong. As far as the terrain, I'm not talking about weather, but terrain wise, again, it's what your comfort level is in the mountains, but there are spots where there's exposure. You do Bear Creek, depending on what time you get to Bear Creek, if you're doing it counterclockwise, pretty much everybody's doing Ouray Bear Creek at night. I mean, it's 200-foot to 300-foot drop-offs on a trail that's 4 feet wide, 3 feet wide. If you tripped at the wrong spot, it'd be bad. So you just walk if you're not feeling that good.
I know that section just based off of photos. I mean, it's literally a sheer wall, 4-foot trail, sheer wall. It's pretty famous photo, yeah.
It's legit. This year they had massive washouts from a storm a few weeks before the race, and they opened the trail just for us for the run.
Wow.
Because it's going to take a while to fix it. So now those shelf trails were even a little bit more sketchier because there was washouts across all those areas that just drop off into the creek down below, where you wouldn't want the public on them.
Wow.
But, yeah.
No big deal.
Other than that, it's technical trails. It's rocky, but usually at night, really snow is the only thing. Frozen snow is the only thing that occasionally presents some sort of challenge as far as, sketchiness. But I don't know that really anybody has ever gotten seriously injured from any section of the course, at nighttime.
I think it's already... It's asking, it's the kind of course that asks so much of those who are participating in it. I also don't think anyone's going to go to it unprepared. I think it already has this notoriety that anyone that gets into it, that they know that they're in for it, so they better be trained or at least comfortable, right?
I mean, the only section of course, and that's usually you're going to do it in the day. If you're going clockwise, doing Grand Swamp Pass towards Chapman, that's probably the only section of the course that fully puckers a first timer that's never done it. Because when you peer over the edge and you're looking down that chute, you just I remember the first time I went clockwise, I was like, holy shit, really? You're going to go down that? How do you do that? Because it's just at the top, it's dried mud with ball bearing gravel on it at, a double black diamond ski slope angle.
Wow.
And then it keeps that grade all the way down it. And then you just get scree and rock on top of that. Now you just jump into it and bomb down it full on laughing the whole way. But again, it's a comfort level thing. But that's the one section of the course that I always warn a first timer in the clockwise direction. If you've never done Grant Swamp to Chapman, you're in for an interesting ride.
Nice.
As well as Virginia's clockwise. If there's snow, usually there's a rope that you can hand over hand down it, or you can just straight up glissade down it and fly down this thing like a little kid laughing. There's a good run out, so you won't get hurt, but again, it's like a super steep ski slope that you're really not in control. You just fly down.
You just let it go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's get to a couple more of the live questions, and then we'll get to recap.
Sure.
Yeah. Another question from Nathaniel. He asked, with 10 finishes, you must have a vast catalog of experiences on course or off, well-known event or not. What's your favorite hard rock memory?
Whew. Favorite. Jeez. There's so many.
I know you only have 20 memories.
Right.
If you can think on this one, we'll hold on to this question because I like it. I'm also curious to know maybe what's one memory that does stand out for you. We'll hold on to that. We'll come back to that maybe towards the end of the show.
Well, I can say one off the hand. It was 2014. I'll try not to cry again. No, when me and Billy Simpson spread John DeWalt's ashes on top of Grand Swamp. That was just one of those special moments. It happened to also be my fastest year, and a lot of stuff happened that year, but just DeWalt was big to the race and big to a lot of people. And it was just such an honor to be up there. There was a few of us. I can't remember who else was with us, but as we spread them, and it was windy as hell and gotten to get a little stormy, but it was just perfect. It was perfect. That's one of those memories that sticks out a lot. I remember another race, probably like when I felt I broke another barrier and coming down off of Putnam, like it felt like the perfect race, and there was a giant double rainbow in the sky. Actually coming into the finish, I take that back, from Jesus Road to the finish, there was a double rainbow over Kendall Mountain. And, that was a favorite memory. Doing the race with my girlfriend this year, that was pretty amazing. She was out there for a quarter of it, for 25 miles of it. Again, sharing it with people you love. Those are a lot of the big things.
I love it. I can only imagine the number of memories. I mean, 10, it sounds like 1 year at Hardrock is enough to create a lifetime of memories, let alone 10 years at Hardrock. And all the people that you meet, all the people that you've met before you ran, I can't even imagine digging from that pool of memories. It's I imagine deep and vast and full.
Well, what's sort of crazy is I could probably go through year by year and still write a complete race report from every single year, because it just burns into your brain, all that stuff you go through.
If you could do that tonight, that would be great. We'll link to it. What were you going to say, Kim?
Oh, I was going to say we have Casey in the chat room.
Casey Lichty's in the chat room.
Yeah, and Casey just said, Casey has a comment. She says, Howie, you have one of the biggest hearts, such great memories and tributes.
Aww.
Casey, a big Howie fan.
Yep, and we're big Casey fans, obviously, here on the show. We've had her on a number of times. And congrats, Casey, to your grandma. Sounds like she ran a pretty awesome race this weekend. So Howie, I want to dig into this year's race. So how did it sound like it was an experience of all experiences. It sounds like it was one of the tougher years for you, but also full of excitement. Let's talk about your crew. Let's talk about some of the big memories that you have from it, some of the challenges. Let's just dive in.
So yeah, this was going to be a special year because, again, it was my 10th. And that's at Hardrock, they do milestones every 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Next year, there'll be a 25-time finisher.
Wow.
Should be Kirk-capped. And so I was excited about this year's race. But I've been so busy photographing, traveling all over, like training has been challenging. So my training didn't get started till late. And I was probably more training. Thank you. Probably more training for a road marathon, because that's what my girlfriend Amal was training for. So I was running with her a ton in LA, because it makes sense to train at sea level for, a race that averages 11,200 feet.
Perfect.
Yeah, but I was getting my time up at Baldy and other places and whatnot. So yeah, this year it was a bit of a dream team of a crew. I mean, I had my friend June coming out, and she had crewed last year, and she was kind of a logistics person, driving everybody around. She always had all the supplies, the food. She got to watch, she took care of the dogs a bit while they were at Kim's house when they had the chance. Amal was my girlfriend, and she was going to pace me from Uray to Grouse, and then from Cunningham to the finish, because I wanted to finish with her. And then, just out of a freak, at Black Canyon, I was hanging out at the finish there after shooting it, talking to Courtney DeWalter's husband, Kevin, who was saying, "Oh, yeah, we're going to be in Uray the week before, then we're going to come to Hardrock to hang out and, maybe volunteer, maybe she'll pace somebody." I was like, "Oh, would she want to pace me?" And then awesome. Kevin asked Courtney, "Hey, would you want to pace Howie at Hardrock?" And she's like, "What? Sure, that'd be awesome." I'm like, "Really?" So she was super stoked to pace, and she wound up pacing Grouse to Cunningham.
Sweet.
And yeah, I was really psyched for this year, because I had a lot of important people to me out there, and again, got to share it with them. And I had concerns about what my fitness was. I knew this year I didn't have a lot of miles on my legs, but I had a lot of speed in my legs and a lot of downhill speed. And this year is kind of the direction where we say we run down the ramps, because there's a lot more dirt road running in this direction. But granted, there's also a couple really steep downhills you don't have in the other direction. So the race itself, I came out like about 3 weeks or so early, which is normally I'm out for like a month and a half or longer. And I got some. There was big fires before the race, so when we first got to town, it was really smoky, and
Right.
it was kind of depressing because you're like, oh gosh, it's smoky. There's a drought here. Things are brown. The ground is crunchy. The wildflowers are already dying, and you're like, oh gosh, this doesn't feel like Hardrock. Like it was kind of depressing. It was sad. And then finally the rains came and things started to green up. Uh, I remember when Amal came out, I took her to Grand Swamp Pass for the first hike, because it's sort of like, if you're going to be introduced to the San Juans, let's go to the spiritual epicenter of Hardrock. So as we're going up there, the clouds are building. By the time we got almost to the pass, her hair was standing on end because the lightning was
Oh my
right
God.
was kind of all around, and we're like, okay, it's time to get out. So her first introduction to the San Juans was, yep, this is Hardrock. You get lightning storms.
Wow.
And so once the race started, things went pretty well. I mean, the first pass, no problem. Grand Swamp was the second pass, no problem. Bomb down, that pretty good. Oscars to me is kind of like the first day crux, because it's 3,000 feet and 3 miles, and it's just hot, and it's a grind. There's really no breaks in that climb. It's just you get onto this steep grade like an elevator shaft and just keep going until you get to 13,000 feet. But it went, it was slow, but it went okay. Nobody really passed me, but and the whole time you're just kind of doing diagnostics, like, well, how am I feeling? Are my legs going to blow up? I'm like, did I train enough? Is things going well? And and so far so good on the downhill. Like, it's pretty rocky, but I'm good at rocky downhill, so I wound up catching a lot of people on the downs. And so you start getting psyched in to come to Telluride because it's the first time you get to see your crew. And it's a big town, so there's a lot of excitement on that 7-mile downhill, especially as you get close. And when I came into there, I actually felt pretty good. And but you're still scared because it's like, wow, it's 5 miles and 4,500 feet of climbing right side outside of town to go up to Virginia's Pass and Kroger's Canteen. I was still feeling a little funky, like my lungs kind of felt weird. Like I was like, am I not altitude acclimated, or am I allergic to something? In the first half of the climb, you're just grinding away, and I'm like, I'm just going to keep it slow. I'm not going to go in a red line. Let's go, not pushing it, but just see what happens. And then I remember coming across 2 runners who were just sitting down, taking a break, and they asked, oh, how long is it to the top? Are we almost there? Is it just like a mile away? And I was like, no, you still got about an hour and a half of climbing.
Wow.
Not to burst your bubble, but it's still you still got a long way to go. But once I passed them, I don't know what happened inside my body chemically, but it all of a sudden felt like my acclimation decided to show up, and I just started catching people left and right going up to the pass. And when I got to the pass, I felt great up at the pass. And Kroger's Canteen is probably one of the most amazing stations at Hardrock. It's run by Rock Horton, who's a 10-time Hard Rocker, but it's a celebrity aid station because while you're up there, you've got Diana Finkel, Darcy Pecue, Anna Frost, Adam Huey, a couple other people. Last year, Scott Jurek was up there. Jeff Browning was up there. And so you got a picture, you're in this notch at 13,000 feet. The aid station's about, 15 feet wide by 15 feet. And they've got a tarp up there, and there's stoves. And the view towards Mount Sneffels on the Ouray side is Joe Grant was up there this year too.
Yep. And
you stare ahead at this looming, just giant chasm and mountains in front of you. And you're just like, wow, I don't care how you feel. If you're feeling like crap or feeling great, you can not help but to feel even better or less crappy by looking at where you're about to go, because it's just insane. And then those guys, Rock all of a sudden pulls out like a little bag, and it has a little $10 bill in it, and it's been signed by everybody, for my 10th. And it was, just again, one of those moments that chokes you up, that you're like, wow, these people really care about you out there.
Yeah.
All the people that are out there, everybody's there to support you and make your journey as amazing as it can be. After that, they're like, okay, they said there's a rope. There was no snow this year, which is weird for Virginia's Pass. I've only seen it one other time without snow.
A couple people have said that. I mean, normally you get a view from up top of the snowfields and stuff for as far as the eye can see, and there was nothing this year. No snow.
It was straight rocks. And
Wow.
but they said it's faster to take the rope. You can run on the rope. I'm like, run? And they're like, yeah, you got gloves, right? I'm like, sure. And so now you got like, Darcy and Diana and Joe and everybody yelling for you to run. So you just start running down this, 45-degree slope using the rope as a brake. You're feeling your hands burning through the gloves, but you're having so much fun just flying down this. If it wasn't for the rope, you'd kill yourself, because there's no way you can make you couldn't make your legs go fast enough. You're like the road runner with your legs underneath, Tasmanian devil, just trying to keep up. And I think I went by Blakewood and Feggy there, actually. They were right in front of me. And then you just got like a 10-mile road down to Ouray from the bottom of that, which is pretty horrible, because it's just a regular dirt road. It's smooth, but it goes on for 10 miles. And by the time you get to Ouray, which is like sea level, it's at 7,800 feet, you feel all this oxygen. But I was feeling, as I got closer to Ouray, I could feel some nausea building. But I'm not sure why. I don't know if I pushed myself a little. I figured I wanted to get to Ouray. As long as I got to Ouray by 8 o'clock at night, given my fitness, that'd be pretty good. And I wound up getting there at 7:28. So I made up a lot of time on that last section because I was feeling really good. But I think I probably pushed myself a little too far, because I was pretty depleted in Ouray. I was definitely a little spacey. I didn't eat enough calories. Even when I left the aid station with Amal, I could feel that I was still spacey and kind of hypoglycemic. But you're like, well, I don't want to spend any more time. I just wanted to get out of there and go. But in the back of your head, you're like, oh, I know, so shit's going to get real pretty soon on this climb. And I was hoping not to have a repeat of 2016 when Katie Grossman now was pacing me. But sure enough, a few miles up Engineer Pass, probably like 4 miles up it, is when I started throwing up again. And I threw up all the way up to Engineer Aid Station. It was, and I was never stopping, and like I would stop to throw up, but other than that, I just kept going. It just was slow. And when I got to Engineer, I was like, well, all I got to do is get some soup or some Coke, and I can get it back. I just got to get enough energy to get over the pass. But everything I was putting in me just kept coming back up. At Engineer, apparently they had homemade Coke, because it's probably all their soda was homemade. Probably because it's a hike-in aid station, and so it's easier to just filter water and maybe bring syrup down there. I don't know. It was bad. It didn't work.
I was gonna say, this doesn't sound like. Big shout out to the aid station for doing the work that they had to do to get the stuff there. Yeah. But homemade Coke doesn't sound great, especially on a stomach that's not doing well.
Yeah, no, the aid station was awesome, but the homemade Coke didn't work. And then I wanted just like some noodle soup. And they're like, well, all we have is vegetable soup. And I'm like, and I try it, and it just tastes like tea. I'm like, oh, this isn't working either. And I'm like, well, great, I can't get any calories. What do I do? And then they said, well, do you want to lay down? So they pulled a little ground pad. So I tried to sleep. I think I was there for over an hour. And the whole time I'm just laying there thinking, how do I get over this pass? Because there's still 1.5 miles and another 1,300 feet of climb. And then you get a 5-mile road down to Grouse. But, that almost 7 miles feels like it could be 1,000,000 miles when you're feeling just destroyed. You have no calories, no energy, and you're in the middle of nowhere.
And it's not going to take an hour and a half. I mean, it's not going to be a quick 7 miles. It's going to be hours.
It's going to be hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. me hours before you get down. And eventually, yeah, in the whole meantime, while I was waiting there, I think Amal took a shot of whiskey because they offered it to her. At least she's having fun. And then finally, they found a little ramen packet. They're like, oh, yeah, we have ramen down here. It's like, oh, wait, why didn't you say that from the start? So I finally got some noodles into me. I ate a saltine, and then I was like, fuck it, let's get out of here. And I said to Amal, I'm like, I got to go. I'm going to take off. And she's like, well, I got to get some stuff ready. I'm like, you can just catch me. I'm like, I just need to move right now. And when I took off, I actually took off really fast. Like, I don't know if it was just the final that you just put it in your mind, like, okay, this is the task at hand. I have to get over the pass. There's no other way out of here. As Billy once said, the only way out is through. You just have to go. And I just started hiking really hard. And eventually I heard somebody running behind me to catch up to me. And it was Amal. And she had to run to catch me. And we caught my friend Chris Twiggs. It was a 14-timer this year. Actually, I remember in the aid station at 10 minutes early at the aid station, I remember asking Chris, I said to him, I'm like, tell me I have to finish. Just tell me I have to finish. Because, you're just out of it. And he's like, Howie, you're going to finish. You'll finish. It's just what you do. And Kirk Apt said the same thing after he went through there. He's like, I know you'll get it done. Don't worry. Again, that's that support. Everybody wants everybody to be successful, and you do what you got to do to help people out. So we made our way up to the pass, and the very end of the pass is crazy steep. It's just up a tundra slope where when you look up at the flags, it looks like you're just looking vertically up at markers. Wow. You think it can't get steeper, but then it does. But when you finally top out, it's just a horrible road for 5 miles. That's really cold. And so you're kind of cold and tired. And I threw up the whole way down the road. But for some reason, I didn't feel weak. I always felt better after I threw up, even though most of the time I was just dry heaving because there was nothing in me other than maybe some water. And at Grouse, when I finally made it there, I don't know what time it was, maybe 4 a.m. A lot slower than normal, but you're like, whatever. I was like, just where's a cot and a sleeping bag? I need to go to sleep because I need to just reset my system. Because that's one thing about hard rock. You've got time. You got a lot of time. Right. If things go south, if you can move quick enough, you have a lot of time to take care of yourself. So I asked for a Coke. They were out of Coke, and somebody was heading back to town to get more Coke for the aid station.
I can make you homemade Coke.
Yeah, exactly. So I was trying to eat a few things. I know Courtney's husband, Kevin, brought me some vegetable soup that was like a potato soup. And I guess I made a really funny face that made all of them laugh. And I tried to eat it, but I couldn't. And I think I spit the potato back in the soup. Apparently, I was told later that he ate the soup anyway. And eventually, I think a bit before 6 o'clock in the morning, it was like, okay, it's time. And Courtney was going to pace me from Grouse now out to Cunningham, which is like 32 miles or something like that. And she's like, well, I'm going to bring some pizza. We'll have a pizza party on top of Handy's Peak. And
Courtney knows food. She knows what to do when it comes to food.
She does. And yeah, she's pretty amazing. It's the first time I've ever run with her. And it's like, here you are at Hardrock. You've got like Courtney, I mean, she's a friend to me. It's like, to everybody else, it was like, oh, they got the winner of Western States, all this, blah, blah. I'm like, but I'm like, oh, I just got this cool person along, to have fun with out on the trail. And we just took off and I popped 4 Advil before I left the aid station. Advil doesn't affect me. Like everybody says, you're going to die from your kidneys, but apparently with me, it doesn't do it. And we just started hiking pretty solid and got up to the first pass, maybe only 10 minutes than I normally do it in training. I'm like, wow, with like 60 miles on my legs, I'm only 10 minutes slower up that. That's kind of that's encouraging. And I was able to finally start to eat some stuff. And then the rest of the climb up to Handy's, like we were steadily catching people the whole way up the climb Handy's. And, that makes you feel a bit better that like, oh, okay, I'm not out of it yet. Like whatever went down all night long has kind of settled down, and I'm getting my legs back, getting my stomach back so I could eat. And, we finally made it up to Handy's. And, I mean, what better place to be at 8 o'clock in the morning than the summit of a 14er with a bunch of other hard rockers with this beautiful blue skies. And I had some pizza on the summit. And Courtney, yeah, she had a ton of positive energy. She's stoked to be up there. And then, running down to Burroughs, she got me to run a lot of stuff I didn't necessarily want to, because I want, it's more comfortable to walk. But she was good at getting me to pull stuff out and run a bit. And then, every person she saw, she was, always happy and positive. And it was a fun morning. And all the way into Sherman, again, I ran a lot of that road that I've never run before, because it feels like it's uphill. But she's like, well, let's just try to run along. It's just try to run, and it's slow, but we got there. And then it's like you get to Sherman, and you're like, well, geez, there's only 28 miles. Although I don't think about the miles. I just remember telling people, I told her, I said, well, basically it's 12 hours from here and we'll be done. And I think we left there at 11:15 in the morning. So I figured, okay, we'll probably finish around 11:15 or so at night, which is, I think 41 hours or something like that.
Right.
And I was like, I mean, most of my finishes were the upper 30s. I'm like, I don't care. I just want to make sure I finish this year. The climb out of there to Pole Creek it's 3,200 feet, but it's gradual. The first 3 miles of the climb are like amazing. She called it like a magical forest, because there's wildflowers as tall as you that you're just going through, whether they're columbines, there's these other purple ones and pink ones and yellow ones all over the place. So, and the grade is not too bad, so you can really enjoy it. There's a creek flowing the whole time. Again, you're like, wow, this is a race. I mean, how can this all be real? It's just so beautiful out there.
Mm-hmm.
A little further on past that, we started to get rained on, and you could hear thunder coming off to our left, but it didn't seem to be anywhere near us. And by the time we hit Pole Creek aid station, which is 80 miles, it was sunny. There was a few clouds around, but it was almost warm. But I remember telling, usually in my strategy in hard rock is, it's like, well, you don't start to push till mile 80, because from mile 80 on, if you blow up, whatever, you're close, you'll make it. But before that, it's too long. So I think at that aid station, I was there pretty short, and I said, okay, I'm going to hammer this next section. And we blasted out of there really hard. And because I was feeling pretty good, I was finally eating normal. And I wound up catching a lot of people on that section that had all passed me in the night on Engineer. And not like I'm trying to catch people, but psychologically, when you felt so bad, now you can catch people. It makes you feel a little stronger. Like, oh, cool, I'm functioning again. And I remember we came into Maggie. I stopped for a second. There's a little cairn that I placed by a thing. I buried another friend's ashes that I had carried around the course. So I stopped to say hi to him. And then so at Maggie, we just ate really quick. And it's like, okay, let's get over Maggie onto a Buffalo Boy Ridge and Canby, which is like 13. As we start up Maggie, you could see interesting clouds forming. And I fucking Billy. And I turned around to Courtney and I'm like, I think shit's about to get real. And sure enough, 5 minutes later, the rain starts, and then rain turns to hail, and now the storm is right over us. And when we get about 50 feet below the ridge, there's about like 5 other runners just huddled down below the ridge, and it's just fully hailing. And now you can see lightning hitting the ridges and peaks in the area. And then some of the lightning, you do the typical counting thing. You see the flash and you're like, well, how close is it? And then every once in a while, one of those flashes, the thunder is like right after it. And one of the people that was huddled down was Kirk Apt. He's a 24-time finisher. I'm like, And I said to Courtney, I'm like, well, if Kirk Apt is huddled down right here, I think we should stay.
Yeah.
He knows a few things. And so now you're just standing still. We're at like 12,900 feet in the open, standing still below a ridge, getting pounded by hail and rain, and there's lightning all around. And you're just like, shit. Well, this is hard rock. And Courtney, she wanted actually, as part of her pacing experience, she wanted to get to experience a bit of the real hard rock and the real storms. So she got her experience there because that was full on. So after about 10 minutes of that, and the hail kind of subsided and the lightning, it sounded like it was moving a little way. I was like, well, fuck it. Let's get out of here. Let's just go. And so I led the whole group we just all took off after that. And then, you get on the ridge and you watch the markers. You're like, oh shit, it just stays on the ridge. Oh, that's splendid.
Oh God.
So you just kind of skirt along, and we just tried to get off that area as quick as possible. I couldn't run. If there were lightning bolts there, I probably would have definitely ran off of the ridge, but I was so cold and tired from just standing there that my quads just didn't work. So I just could hike fast. But what's wild is when you're on that top ridge, the storm was still over Little Giant, the last pass. And I remember seeing multiple lightning bolts hit the last pass, like big ones. You're just like, damn, I hope nobody's up there, because that would be terrifying. So then coming over the last pass to Cunningham with Courtney is Green Mountain. And it's just, the sky, it's sunny again. And it's this beautiful green valleys, and you see there's a creek down below, and it's reflecting the sunlight, and it's just gorgeous. And she's stoked to be there, and she's, we're just having a grand time running down through that stuff, and there's wildflowers, and you're like, oh, this is great. I'll get to Cunningham at 7 something, and now you just got to blast off the final climb. So come down into Cunningham. Everybody's waiting there, and I'm going to switch pacers back to Amal. And I'm feeling a bit nauseous. Oh, and I guess, on Green Mountain, when I went to pee, my pee was pink, which I've never had before. So I was like, huh. Is that
homemade Coke?
Is that just my bladder rubbing, or is that something else?
Like kidney issues, yeah.
Pretty much. So I didn't want to take any Advil just in case, and I was a little nauseous, and I said, and so I just, Darcy PQ was there, and I'm like, oh, do they have a bagel and cream cheese here? I'm like, I always finish with a bagel and cream cheese, and she went and got one. They had one, and then Amal and I took off up the pass, and as we start, and for those not familiar, Little Giant, the last pass, is basically a 2,800 foot climb in 1.9 miles. Up to 13,000 feet. It's quite a farewell for the San Juan tour. And so we take off grinding up this thing, and I'm just I'm not pushing because I don't know what the nausea is doing, and I don't know what the pink pee is. And as we get about a third of the way up, you're looking at the sky going, yeah, that's not a clear sky anymore. That's kind of a dark sky, and there's stuff falling from it. And then there's a peak kind of in front of you on this one switchback. And in the span of about 30 seconds, pretty much watch this peak get hit 3 times with lightning. And you're like, oh, fuck, this sucks. And I passed my one friend, Julian Smith, and he hunkered down. He's like, I already dealt with the lightning on Maggie. I don't want to deal with it again. He's like, I'm going to wait it out. I'm like, oh, we're just going to push through. To play on through, It's like, we got rain gear on. We'll be fine. A couple switchbacks later, when it started to rain like harder than hell, and then the lightning was like constant, and we got to the last of the trees at tree line, it was like, let's hunker down, because this is way too intense. I don't want to go another 1,000 feet up, and now you're out in the open hunkering down, because that would just be like straight misery. And then we noticed everybody else had stopped. So we just sat down under a tree, and Amal had a rain poncho that seemed more like a tarp. The thing was like a square. It was huge. And so we just put this over ourselves, and we're huddled next to each other, and it definitely created warmth. And and we sat there for like a half hour to 45 minutes while pretty much all hell broke loose. I have never seen that much lightning in my life in one storm. It sat there over you, and just constant bolts. And some of the bolts, it sounded like it was hitting the ground for 5 seconds, and then you'd hear the loudest bang instantly that you could imagine. It's like Mother Nature was freaking pissed. And the whole time while sitting under there, I was thinking, like, this storm is over all 3 of the last passes. Like, I was truly fearful that this is going to be the year somebody dies at Hardrock. How is it not? Because there was so much lightning going on, and you got people on 3 different passes all getting hit. It wasn't scary where we were, because I knew I was still a couple thousand feet below there was probably 1,500 feet below the pass. But you're just sitting there going, can you please end? Like, I just want to finish the race. I just want to be done.
I can imagine.
And here you are at like 94 miles, you're sore, you're tired, and you're just getting pelted with rain and lightning and thunder. And sometimes you're going, God, what if this storm lasts 5 hours? What if I don't have enough time to finish? Because and you're like, there's no way you can go over the top. You just can't do it, because there was just way too much lightning up there. And Amal also wanted the real Hardrock experience of an actual storm. Well, she got the biggest storm that I've ever seen in the race in 14 years. And in fact, I even had a friend who was going over the pass, and a lightning bolt actually struck 10 feet in front of his pacer. And his pacer practically shit himself, and was he told him to run ahead, and by the time he got to the top, his pacer was like a mile down the trail. Like, he ran so fast. But it was insane. So when it finally, as you're sitting there and the lightning finally the thunder seemed to subside, and the rain was still going, you're finally like, well, let's go. Let's see what happens. And so you just, and we could hear other people starting to hike. I think Scotty Mills had went by, and a few others. And so we finally started off hiking, and you could ski the sky. The skies were finally gradually clearing, and you're like, okay, I think everything's going to be all right. And you just slowly trudge your way to the top of the pass, which came quicker than I expected. But I was confused at where I was, because I normally don't stop. Normally I'm not in the dark on that pass, and then normally I don't ever stop on that pass. So it was hard to tell. I thought I was lower on the pass than I was, and before I realized it, I'm like, oh gosh, we're almost at the top. Like, I had caught back up to Scott Mills, who had just, and Scott, Scotty. Yeah. He's like
legend in the 60, sport.
Yep. He had just done Western States. So it's always awesome to see Scotty. And we both got pretty much, I went by him, and then we got to the top of the pass, and then I waited for a minute, and then he came up as well. And then you cross the saddle, and then you have this wonderfully technical, steep single track on a massive side hill that you don't want to fall in certain areas, because it would be less than a pleasant experience. It would definitely be a helicopter ride out. But fortunately, it was because of all the rain. If it's dry, it's slippery as hell. But it's actually pretty good traction. And we made it down that fine. And then you got like 2 miles of bad dirt road, and then a couple miles of rolling single track. And I started throwing up again on the descent on the
nice last little gift is here, Howie.
I was like, I'm like, you're making it hard for this 10th. You're really making me work for this one. But at least this time when I was throwing up, I wasn't really. Sometimes I would stop, but a lot of times I would just dry heave or throw up while I was still hiking, because I just didn't want to stop anymore. I just wanted to be done. I think even a mile from the finish, I still threw up again. But yeah, I mean, again, that, and I was having trouble having emotion come out because I think I was so tired, and just with all the storms, they just sapped so much energy out of you at the end of being in hail and rain and lightning that you just couldn't believe it was going to be real until you were almost out to Kendall Mountain and you first get the first glimpse of town, and then you run through the ski area, and that's where I started to run fast. And your stride opens up because all the endorphins kick in, and you're like, oh my god, it's actually going to be over.
Yeah,
it's going to happen. And it was so cool running. And as you come out of the ski area, there's the old rock there, the original Hardrock. So I stopped to kiss that because that was the first one I kissed, and I figured that'd be appropriate. Kiss the original rock and then half a mile later, running through town with the mall was great. And then you turn the left turn, and you can see people waiting for you at the far side of the street. I think then Courtney and Kevin eventually joined us, and then we all ran in, and there was the rock. And as usual, I cry at the finish. And the doggies were there. Yeah, it was a battle this year. I had always told friends I was hoping for big storms. I liked big storms because that's Hardrock. So I just didn't expect them to be so big and to be at the end. But it was, I still can't believe 10 times. Like, I remember walking in that gym for the first time and seeing guys like Kirk Aft and Blake Wood, who had maybe had like 10 or 11 finishes at that time, and some of the other long timers like Betsy Kallmeyer or Betsy Nye. And you looked at those people like giants, like, wow, these are amazing people. And then it's just weird to think like, oh, now you've done it like 10 times, or anybody who's done this race. I mean, everybody who's ever towed the line at Hardrock, it takes so much to get through this race. It's truly unlike anything else. There's hard hundreds. I mean, Wasatch is really hard. Leadville's hard. Angeles Crest is hard. But as somebody said at the pre-race meeting, they had like this saying: Hardrock is like a bug zapper. It lures you in and then tries to kill you. And that's true. That's what it's like. I mean, it will strip you to your core in ways you never imagined. Because it just never stops. It never stops coming at you. And even when you think you're done, then you're stuck under a tree for a half hour while
it tries to kill you.
It tries to kill you, literally. So,
Howie Stern.
Anyway, sorry for that long-winded story.
I'll be totally honest. We've had a number of guests on the show, and obviously I know that you're a storyteller. I've had conversations with you many, many times, and as you're telling this story, I'm realizing that we have an audience. Who do we have?
Hey, Joey.
Is that Joey? It's dark in that room.
Where's Joey? Give me your face.
Oh.
For the uninitiated, these are two of Howie's pups. They are beautiful, beautiful dogs.
It's like.
But what I was saying, Howie, is I was getting caught up in the story, and like, we don't often get a chance to hear such a detailed retelling of a race experience, and I just wanted to hear it. So I'm really glad that we got the full story.
Yeah, people in the chat room are loving having an actual full race.
Yeah, because so often on the show, we try to fit it into a certain time period and that sort of thing. But tonight I was like, I just, because this race is so big, and because the accomplishment of your accomplishment, Howie, being a 10-time finisher, I think that it has weight, and it needed to be. I needed to hear the whole thing. I am blown away, man. I'm blown away not only at the 10-year accomplishment, but just like finishing this race once. I can only imagine what that feels like. Finishing it 10 times. I mean, man, like you said, you looked up to those people early on, those who did have 10-time finishes and stuff like that as gods. And Howie, you are a god.
You're one of them.
No.
Well, honestly, man, it's a huge accomplishment.
I'm just an idiot. And I still and then now those people like Kirk is, he got his 24th finish this year.
Yeah.
Lake, I believe, was 22. Mark Heafy was 20. Betsy Kallmeyer is 19, I think it was, or Betsy Nye. I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, and then when you think back the years wise, you're like, wow. I mean, it's like, that's 20 something years of their lives. It was like 14 years of my life. There's so many people this race really, it's like it's changed their lives. It's so many people like all throughout the year. That's what they think about.
Yeah.
When is Hardrock. It's crazy. It really is crazy. And, I hope someday that everybody that ever applies to this race gets in to experience that.
Yeah.
Because it's unreal. And I know for me, I'm going to take the next 2 years off and I want to shoot the race, but I want to do like a photo essay, like a book on the race that tells the story. And
that'd be amazing, man. I was going to finish with that question. Now that you have 10 finishes, would you go back and shoot it? Because I know that you haven't shot it yet.
No, I want to come out with a book that tells the story of that, but kind of a view from the inside a bit.
I love it.
Somebody that knows the race, and I want to have stories in it from people that have been around the race a long time, as well as people that's their first time. Because I'd like to have the experience of everybody. Because Hardrock, I mean, there's so much stuff you read on the internet. People try, like always have something to talk about. But Hardrock really is a race of inclusion. I mean, really, they do want everybody to have the chance to do that race and experience it. Doesn't matter who you are, where you come from. They want people to be involved with that race. So it'd be awesome to be able to tell the story of that race and from all angles, all perspectives, and knowing that course so well. I mean, gosh, there's so many amazing places to shoot that I've never seen shot before. It'd be cool to see what I can do out there. It might take more than 2 years. I don't know.
I mean, that's like as you're describing it, I'm going, this is something that you're going to work on for a bit, but I imagine that the end product is going to be, there's not going to be anything in comparison. So I can't wait. I love it. I love your eye. I love your composition, and I think you're a talented artist, man. So I look forward to being first in line for something like this.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Howie, we're gonna wrap up the main show. We are gonna keep you a little bit longer for the post show. We have so many questions from the live show that we're gonna try to get to in the post show.
Oh, sure.
Before we move into the post show, though, again, a huge congratulations, Howie. We've known you for years, and it's so exciting to see you accomplish such a milestone at such like an incredible event. So big ups to you, man.
Thank you.
I'm excited to see what's next for you. I don't know. Before we even move into the quickie question quiz, because this is Howie's first time on the show. This is something we do with all first time guests. Before I describe it, I want people to go see your work. A lot of people have already mentioned in the chat room, like, go find his Instagram and stuff like that. Can you remind those who are watching live where they can find your work? So
my Instagram is at Howie Stern Photo. And then I have a website, which is just howiestern.com. That one is really just set up that's mainly my race photos for sales. I need to set up actually I want to set up a separate website that more like showcases, like a portfolio of things I do. But the Instagram has a lot of different stuff from the different events that I've shot, whether it's, at Western, Lake Sonoma, at the 200 milers I shoot at. Some of it's of my dogs, some of it's, but that's a good sampling of things that I do. But in the future, there will be another website that'll be more of a showcase of things to come. Howie Stern Photo on Instagram or howiestern.com right now. But then just follow Howie on those platforms, and you'll find out more about the maybe forthcoming website. Okay, so Howie, this is what we do with our first-time guests on the show. It's a quickie question quiz. It is a rapid-fire series of very quick questions. You just answer with the very first thing that comes to your mind. It's very simple. You let me know when you're ready to go with a little thumbs up, and we'll start it. Go for it. What is your very first race? Oh, geez. Oh, how do I do? It's like the Valley of Fire half marathon.
Correct. Favorite place to run?
Silverton.
Correct. Road or trails?
Trails.
Correct. Bucket list race?
I hate bucket lists. Nolan's.
Correct.
It's not a race, though.
It's not a race, but it's epic. Favorite running movie?
Oh, wait. I can't even remember what the hell the name of it is. Where Dreams Go to Die.
Very correct.
And that's the end of the show.
And that's the end of the show. No. Guilty pleasure TV show?
Guilty pleasure TV show. Oh, Family Guy.
Nice. What was the meal that you ate before Hardrock? What was your pre-race meal?
Bagel and cream cheese and coffee.
Post-race indulgence. What's the first thing you had post-Hardrock?
A crispy chicken sandwich and mint chocolate chip ice cream.
Actually sounds just good forever. Current running kicks, or what did you run Hardrock in?
Oh, actually, it's the first time I ever wore them.
You're known for doing.
I feel like this
isn't the first time you've done this.
Yes, it was the Ultra Olympus.
Nice.
Yep.
Howie, you passed.
No blisters either.
That's
Nothing.
good.
Yep.
Congratulations, you passed the quickie question quiz.
Yep.
I remember you did. Like, was it AC or was it Hardrock last year that you ran the Timps like right out of the box?
Hardrock. Yeah. Yep.
I love that Hardrock's your training ground for any new shoe. Me too. Because I was like,
Well,
who would run Hardrock
yeah.
in a new shoe?
Right. The Ultra seemed to fit well, and yeah, I'd never run in. And I was told by Jenny Welch that the Olympus had been redesigned, and you would probably like it. So then I asked one of the Ultra people for an Olympus, and Michael McKnight got me a pair, and they were awesome. Yeah,
Well
they're like running on marshmallows, but they fit really well. And again, no blisters and no hot spots during the race. So I was happy.
Nice.
And they held up well. They if I washed them, they'd probably look 80% new.
Well, again, our guest tonight, Howie Stern, crushed Hardrock for the 10th time. He's run 1,000 miles of Hardrock, which is pretty crazy to think about. A huge accomplishment and a stellar story with some of the crazy storms, fantastic pacers. It just seems to be an adventure and a memory all around. A wonderful guest, Howie Stern. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It was an honor.
And thank you all for tuning in for tonight's Ginger Runner Live, episode number 220. We are going to move into the post show a little bit with Howie. We have so many questions from the live show. We're going to try to rapid fire through as many of those as we can in like 10 minutes or something with Howie in the post show. If you would like to join us, it's very easy. All you got to do is go to patreon.com/thegingerrunner for as little as $1 a month. That's all it costs to join us for all of our post shows, all of our guests, from the front of the pack to the back of the pack. Whoever joins us on Ginger Runner Live joins us for the post shows. So we'd love to have you join us as well if you are already, or if you are not already a member of the Patreon crew. Otherwise, if you are a member, we'll see you guys in just a couple of seconds. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in for tonight's live show. Get out there, train hard, race harder, and probably the hardest. I know I am. We'll see you guys next week for more Ginger Runner Live, right?
That's it.
All right. See you guys.
Bye.